The gentle revolution. What we begin to realize about life when there is no rush. A warm exploration of the profound insights that emerge when we finally learn to slow down. There comes a moment in life when you stop running toward tomorrow and start walking with today. This isn't about giving up or settling down. It's about discovering that the most profound truths were waiting for us all along, hidden in the spaces between our hurried breaths. Introduction. The beautiful pause. There's something magical that happens when you finally stop rushing. It's not the exhaustion of giving up or the resignation of defeat. It's something far more beautiful. It's the moment you realize that life has been unfolding perfectly all along and you were just moving too fast to notice. I remember the first time I truly understood this. I was sitting in my garden on a Tuesday morning, coffee growing cold in my hands, watching a spider weave its web between two rose bushes. The sun was hitting the silk strands just right, creating tiny rainbows in the dewdrops. For the first time in years, I had nowhere to be, nothing urgent demanding my attention. And in that stillness, something profound washed over me, the realization that I had been sprinting through a museum, missing all the masterpieces. This isn't a story about retirement or slowing down because you have to. It's about the wisdom that emerges when we finally give ourselves permission to exist at the pace of understanding rather than the pace of achievement. It's about what we begin to see when we're no longer running towards some distant finish line, but walking gently through the landscape of our actual lives. The truth is, some of life's most important insights can only be received when we're moving slowly enough to catch them. They're not shouted from mountaintops or revealed in dramatic moments of crisis. They whisper themselves into existence during quiet conversations, afternoon naps, and the space between one breath and the next. Chapter 1. The Art of Being Present. When there's no rush, the first thing you discover is the extraordinary richness of the ordinary moment. It's as if someone has adjusted the focus on the camera of your life, and suddenly details that were always there become vivid and meaningful. You begin to notice that your morning coffee has layers of flavor you'd never tasted when you were gulping it down while checking emails. The weight of the mug in your hands, the steam rising in delicate spirals, the way the first sip changes as it cools, these become small meditations rather than mere fuel for productivity. Without the pressure of the next appointment, the next deadline, the next milestone, you start to inhabit your senses fully. The texture of your favorite sweater against your skin, the way light moves across the wall as the day progresses. The particular quality of silence that fills your home in the early morning hours. This isn't about becoming overly precious about everyday experiences. It's about recognizing that presence itself is a skill, one that modern life rarely gives us the chance to develop. When we're always focused on what's coming next, we miss the subtle education that each moment offers. I think about my grandmother, who lived to be 97. In her later years, she would spend long minutes just holding a tomato from her garden, feeling its weight, admiring its color, inhaling its green scent. I used to think this was just the slowness of age, but now I understand it was mastery. She had learned to extract the full value from each experience, to be completely where she was. Being present without urgency teaches us that time isn't a river rushing toward the sea, it's more like a deep lake, and we can choose to float on its surface or dive down to explore its depths. Most of our lives, we've been skipping stones across the water, admiring the ripples but never knowing what lies beneath. When you finally stop skipping stones and slip into the water yourself, you discover that each moment contains multitudes. A single conversation with a friend can unfold layers of meaning that would have been lost in the rush to the next engagement. A walk around your neighborhood reveals details you've passed by 1,000 times without seeing the way Mrs. Peterson tends her flower boxes, the sound of children playing in backyards, the dozen different shades of green that make up what you used to simply call trees. This quality of attention changes everything. It changes how you listen to music, moving from background noise to a full engagement with melody, harmony, and the spaces between notes. It changes how you read, allowing you to taste the author's words rather than just consuming their plot. It changes how you love, shifting from the passionate urgency of youth to something deeper and more sustaining, the ability to truly see and appreciate another person as they are right now, in this moment. The beautiful irony is that when you stop trying to get somewhere quickly, you often find that you've arrived at exactly where you needed to be all along. Chapter 2. The wisdom of patience. Patience, when you're no longer in a hurry, reveals itself to be something entirely different from what you thought it was. It's not gritting your teeth and waiting for something better to come along. It's not passive endurance or resigned acceptance. It's an active engagement with the natural rhythms of life, a deep trust in the timing of things. You begin to understand that some things simply cannot be rushed, and trying to force them often ruins their essence entirely. You can't hurry the healing of a broken heart any more than you can hurry the ripening of fruit. You can't speed up the development of a genuine friendship or fast-track your way to wisdom. These things have their own internal clocks, and learning to honor those rhythms becomes a kind of spiritual practice. I learned this lesson most clearly from watching my daughter learn to walk. As a younger parent, I was always encouraging, always ready with my hands out, always celebrating each wobbly step. But it wasn't until she was walking confidently that I realized I had missed something crucial: the profound concentration on her face as she figured out balance. The private satisfaction of her solo attempts when she thought no one was watching, the way she would sit down and rest when she needed to, without any shame or sense of failure. When we're not rushing, we start to see that patience isn't about waiting for life to begin. It's about recognizing that life is already happening in its own perfect timing. The seasons don't apologize for their pace. Spring doesn't rush its arrival because we're tired of winter, and autumn doesn't delay its coming because we're not ready for summer to end. This understanding extends to our relationships with others. Without the pressure of trying to fix or change people quickly, we develop the capacity to simply be with them as they are, to love them through their seasons of growth and dormancy. We stop trying to hurry our teenagers into maturity or our aging parents into acceptance. We learn to offer presence instead of solutions, understanding instead of urgency. Patience also teaches us about the difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up carries the energy of defeat, of frustrated dreams abandoned. Letting go is something entirely different. It's the wisdom to recognize when our tight grip on outcomes is actually preventing those outcomes from occurring naturally. Think about how a garden grows. You can plant the seeds, water them, provide good soil and sunlight, but you cannot make them grow faster by pulling on the shoots. Your role is to create conditions and then trust the process. Some seeds will sprout quickly, others will take their time, and a few might surprise you by appearing just when you'd given up hope. When we're no longer in a hurry, we become master gardeners of our own lives. We learn to plant seeds of kindness without demanding immediate gratitude, to invest in relationships without expecting instant returns, to pursue meaningful work without requiring immediate recognition. We understand that the most beautiful outcomes often take root slowly, in darkness, before they're ready to break through into the light. This kind of patience transforms how we handle setbacks and disappointments. Instead of seeing them as delays in our progress, we begin to recognize them as redirections, as opportunities to learn something we couldn't have learned any other way. The job that didn't work out led us to the one that did. The relationship that ended taught us what we truly needed in love. The plan that fell through created space for something better than we could have imagined. Chapter 3. The Grace of Simplicity. When the pressure to accomplish more, acquire more, and become more finally lifts, something beautiful happens. You start to discover what actually matters. Not what you think should matter, or what others have told you matters, but what your own heart recognizes as essential when all the noise dies down. Simplicity, in this context, isn't about living in a bare room with only the minimum necessities. It's about clarity of purpose, about stripping away the non-essential so that the essential can shine. It's about recognizing that a life of depth is often more satisfying than a life of breadth. I remember a conversation with a friend who had just retired from a demanding career in finance. She said something that stayed with me. I thought I was collecting experiences and achievements, but I was actually just collecting distractions from what I really wanted to do, which was to pay attention to my life while I was living it. When we're not rushing toward the next goal, we start to notice how much energy we've been spending on things that don't actually nourish us. The social obligations we accepted out of guilt rather than joy. The possessions we accumulated because they seemed like what successful people should own. The activities we filled our calendars with because busyness felt like productivity, and productivity felt like worth. Simplicity teaches us the difference between wants and needs, between what enhances our lives and what merely fills them. You discover that a perfectly ripe pear eaten slowly brings more satisfaction than an expensive meal consumed while distracted. That a long conversation with someone you love is more rejuvenating than a weekend getaway that leaves you needing a vacation from your vacation. This isn't about judgment or superiority, it's about discernment. When you're not constantly acquiring and achieving, you develop the ability to sense what truly resonates with your deeper self. You become selective not because you're picky, but because you've learned to recognize quality over quantity in all areas of life. The grace of simplicity also extends to how we think about problems. Instead of immediately reaching for complex solutions, we learn to ask better questions. Instead of, how can I fix this quickly? We might ask, what is this situation trying to teach me? Instead of, how can I get what I want? We might wonder, what do I actually need right now? This shift in questioning often leads to surprisingly elegant solutions. The relationship conflict that seemed to require lengthy discussions and complicated negotiations might resolve itself when you simply choose to listen more and defend less. The career dissatisfaction that felt like it needed a complete life overhaul might transform when you bring more presence and creativity to your current role. Simplicity in relationships means saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and not expecting others to read between lines you haven't actually drawn. It means offering apologies when you're wrong without lengthy explanations or justifications. It means expressing love directly rather than through elaborate gestures that might miss the mark entirely. In daily life, simplicity might mean having fewer clothes, but loving everything in your closet. It might mean cooking simple meals with good ingredients rather than attempting elaborate dishes that stress you out. It might mean choosing one book to read deeply rather than skimming through many. The beautiful paradox of simplicity is that it often leads to greater richness rather than less. When you're not spreading your attention across dozens of pursuits, you can go deeper into the ones that truly matter to you. When you're not maintaining friendships with people who drain your energy, you have more to offer the relationships that genuinely nourish you. Chapter 4. The Deep Conversations. When urgency leaves the room, space opens up for the kinds of conversations that actually matter, the ones that go beneath the surface of weather and work schedules to touch something real and essential in both people. These conversations don't happen on command. They emerge in the spaciousness that exists when neither person is watching the clock, when there's no agenda to accomplish or point to prove. They arise in the pauses between words, in the safety of unhurried attention, in the rare gift of someone who is genuinely curious about your inner landscape rather than just waiting for their turn to speak. I think about the difference between networking conversations and communion conversations. Networking conversations, even when well-intentioned, carry the energy of transaction. What can we do for each other? How can this connection be useful? What value can we extract from this interaction? Communion conversations are entirely different. They're about recognition, about seeing and being seen, about the deep human need to be known and understood. When there's no rush, you develop the patience to let conversations ripen naturally. You're not pushing toward a conclusion or trying to solve someone's problems. You're simply present with their experience, offering the spaciousness for them to think out loud, to discover what they actually believe by hearing themselves say it. These deeper conversations often begin with someone saying something true, rather than something impressive. I've been thinking about my father a lot lately since he died. I'm not sure I chose the right career. Sometimes, I feel like I'm pretending to be more confident than I actually am. These vulnerable openings require the safety of knowing that the other person isn't going anywhere, isn't checking their phone, isn't already formulating advice or judgment. The art of deep conversation includes learning to ask questions that invite reflection rather than just information. Instead of, "How was your day?" you might ask, "What surprised you today?" Instead of, "How are you?" you might wonder, "What's been alive in you lately?" These aren't better questions because they're more sophisticated, but because they create space for more authentic responses. Deep conversations also require comfort with silence. When someone is processing something meaningful, they often need pauses to find the right words, to let emotions surface, to discover what they actually think about something complex. The urge to fill these silences with reassurance or advice often interrupts the very process that leads to insight and connection. You learn that the most helpful thing you can offer someone who is struggling isn't necessarily a solution, but simply the experience of being truly heard. There's something profoundly healing about having your experience witnessed without judgment, about feeling that your inner world matters to another person enough for them to give it their full attention. These conversations change you both. When someone trusts you with their authentic self, it calls forth your own authenticity in response. When someone shares their fears or dreams or confusion with you, it reminds you of your own humanity, your own complexity, your own ongoing journey of becoming. The beautiful thing about deep conversations is that they create intimacy without trying to. When two people are genuinely curious about each other's inner experience, when they're present with whatever emerges without trying to fix or change it, something sacred happens. Not dramatic or overwhelming, but sacred in the way that all genuine human connection touches something holy. Chapter 5. The Rhythm of Rest. Rest, when you're no longer fighting it, reveals itself to be one of life's most underestimated forms of wisdom. Not rest as collapse from exhaustion, not rest as procrastination or avoidance, but rest as an active choice to honor the natural rhythms that sustain all living things. When we stop seeing rest as the absence of productivity and start recognizing it as essential to sustainable creativity and well-being, everything changes. We begin to understand that rest isn't what we do between the important parts of life, it's what makes the important parts possible. Think about how nature models rest for us. Trees don't grow continuously. They have seasons of expansion and seasons of dormancy. Even the earth itself rests in winter, gathering energy for spring's explosion of growth. Animals naturally alternate between activity and rest, without any guilt or sense of wasted time. Only humans seem to have convinced ourselves that constant motion equals value. When there's no rush, you start to notice the different qualities of rest that your body and mind crave at different times. Sometimes you need the rest of sleep, of course, but there's also the rest of stillness, the rest of solitude, the rest of engaging in activities that restore rather than drain you. There's the rest of saying no to commitments that don't align with your values or energy. There's the rest of sitting in your garden without thinking about what needs to be weeded or planted. There's the rest of listening to music without doing anything else, letting the melodies wash over you without analyzing or improving the experience. You discover that rest isn't always quiet or still. Sometimes rest is the gentle movement of walking without destination, the rhythmic activity of knitting or cooking, the meditative focus of tending to simple tasks with full attention. Rest is anything that allows your nervous system to settle, your mind to quiet, your spirit to replenish itself. One of the most profound forms of rest is the rest from trying to be someone other than who you are. When you're not rushing towards self-improvement or constantly working to fix your perceived flaws, you can simply be present with yourself as you are right now. This doesn't mean giving up on growth or learning it. It means growing from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-rejection. Rest also teaches us about the wisdom of pausing before responding. When someone says something that triggers us, instead of immediately reacting, we can create a small space of rest, a breath, a moment of consideration, a gentle checking in with ourselves before we speak. This tiny practice can transform relationships and prevent countless unnecessary conflicts. The rhythm of rest helps us understand that not every moment needs to be optimized or improved. Some moments are perfect exactly as they are, requiring nothing from us except presence and appreciation. The way afternoon light slants through your window, the sound of rain on the roof, the feeling of your pet curled up beside you, these experiences don't need enhancement or documentation. They just need to be received. When we honor rest, we model for others that it's possible to live differently, that worth isn't determined by constant achievement, that there's profound value in simply being alive and aware. We give permission for the people around us to slow down too, to breathe more deeply, to trust that they are enough exactly as they are. Chapter 6. The Art of Letting Go. Letting go, when you finally understand it, has nothing to do with giving up and everything to do with trusting life enough to stop trying to control it. It's perhaps the most sophisticated skill that develops when we're no longer rushing the ability to hold things lightly, to love without clinging, to care deeply while remaining open to whatever wants to emerge. The art of letting go begins with recognizing how much energy we spend trying to manage outcomes that are ultimately beyond our control. We exhaust ourselves attempting to make other people love us the way we want to be loved, trying to force opportunities that aren't ready to open, struggling to prevent changes that are part of life's natural evolution. When there's no urgency driving us, we start to see the difference between responsibility and control. We're responsible for our choices, our responses, our own growth and healing. But we're not in control of how others respond to us, how quickly things unfold, or whether our efforts will produce the specific results we're hoping for. This doesn't lead to passivity or indifference. Instead, it leads to a more effective way of engaging with life, putting our energy into what we can actually influence while developing equanimity about everything else. It's like the difference between swimming against a current and learning to navigate with it. You're still swimming, still choosing your direction, but you're working with the river's flow rather than exhausting yourself fighting it. Letting go in relationships means loving people as they are rather than as we think they should be. It means offering our gifts without demanding specific returns, supporting others' journeys even when they lead away from us, celebrating their growth even when it means growing apart. This kind of love is more sustainable because it doesn't depend on the other person meeting our expectations or remaining unchanged. You learn to let go of old versions of yourself with the same gentleness. The person you were 5 years ago, with different dreams and fears and limitations, doesn't need to be carried forward or defended. You can honor who you were while making space for who you're becoming, understanding that growth often requires releasing identities that no longer fit. Letting go also applies to the stories we tell ourselves about how life should unfold. The timeline we had in mind for our career, the way we thought our children would turn out, the retirement we planned, the body we expected to have at this age. When we can hold these expectations lightly, we create space for life to surprise us with possibilities we never would have imagined. There's a particular kind of letting go that happens with regrets and mistakes. Instead of carrying them as heavy baggage or using them to punish ourselves indefinitely, we can extract their lessons and then set them down. We can apologize where appropriate, make amends where possible, and then trust that we did the best we could with the awareness we had at the time. The practice of letting go teaches us that attachment and love are not the same thing. We can love deeply while holding lightly. We can care profoundly while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. In fact, this kind of love is often more nourishing for everyone involved because it's free from the anxiety and manipulation that comes with clinging. When we truly let go, we often discover that what we were trying so hard to hold on to either comes back to us in a new form or reveals itself to have been preventing something better from entering our lives. The job we fought to keep, but eventually lost, leads to work that's more aligned with our values. The relationship that ended despite our efforts makes space for love that's more mutual and sustainable. Chapter 7. The Beauty of Ordinary Days. When you're not constantly seeking peak experiences or waiting for special occasions to feel fully alive, you begin to discover the extraordinary richness hidden in ordinary days. This might be one of the most revolutionary insights of unhurried living, that Tuesday afternoon holds as much potential for wonder and meaning as any holiday or celebration. The beauty of ordinary days lies in their availability. They don't require special planning or perfect circumstances. They don't cost anything or depend on other people's schedules. They're simply here, offering themselves to us again and again, waiting for us to notice what they contain. An ordinary day might begin with the ritual of making coffee, but when you're not rushing toward the first meeting or scrolling through emails while the pot brews, this simple act becomes something more. You notice the sound of the grinder, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, the way steam rises from your mug. You're present for the transition from sleep to wakefulness, honoring this daily resurrection with attention rather than urgency. Ordinary days teach us that happiness isn't always the big, obvious emotions we imagine. Sometimes, it's the quiet satisfaction of completing a simple task well, the gentle pleasure of sunlight warming your shoulders while you read, the contentment of sharing an unremarkable dinner with someone you love while talking about nothing particularly important. You start to see your daily routines not as obstacles to overcome on the way to more interesting activities, but as opportunities for mindfulness and small pleasures. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on warm water and clean things. Folding laundry becomes a moment of care for the clothes that care for you. Walking to the mailbox becomes a brief communion with weather and sky and the simple miracle of your body moving through space. Ordinary days also reveal the profound satisfaction of having enough. When you're not constantly comparing your life to others' highlight reels or feeling pressure to make every day extraordinary, you can appreciate the abundance that already exists in your regular life. The roof over your head, the food in your refrigerator, the people who care about you, the books waiting to be read, the music waiting to be heard. The beauty of ordinary days includes embracing the full spectrum of human experience without judgment. Some days you wake up energetic and optimistic, ready to take on challenges and spread joy. Other days you feel slower, more contemplative, perhaps a little melancholy. When you're not rushing to fix or change these natural fluctuations, you can receive whatever the day brings with curiosity rather than resistance. Ordinary days teach us that meaning doesn't have to be profound or life-changing to be real. The meaning found in preparing a good meal for your family, in helping a neighbor with a small task, in listening to a friend work through a problem, in tending to your own growth and healing, these meanings accumulate like compound interest, creating a life of substance and satisfaction. You discover that ordinary days are where love actually lives. Not in grand gestures or perfect moments, but in the daily choice to show up with kindness, to notice what others need, to offer small acts of care without fanfare. Love in ordinary days looks like making someone's favorite tea when they're tired, like really listening when they tell you about their day, like being patient when they're not at their best. The revolution of embracing ordinary days is that it makes every day potentially meaningful. You're no longer waiting for life to begin or for circumstances to be perfect. You're living fully right now, finding richness in what is rather than yearning for what might be. Chapter 8. The Wisdom of Not Knowing. Perhaps the most counterintuitive insight that emerges when we stop rushing is the profound peace that comes with admitting we don't know everything and don't need to. In a culture that rewards quick answers and confident opinions, learning to rest in uncertainty becomes a radical act of wisdom. When there's no pressure to have everything figured out immediately, you can sit comfortably with questions that don't have clear answers. What's the right decision about your aging parents' care? How do you balance supporting your adult children without enabling them? What does it mean to age gracefully? These questions don't require immediate solutions. They invite ongoing reflection and gradual understanding. The wisdom of not knowing begins with recognizing how much energy we spend pretending to be more certain than we actually are. We offer advice when "I don't know" might be more honest. We make plans as if we can control the future when we can barely predict next week. We judge situations based on incomplete information because admitting ignorance feels vulnerable. But when you're not rushing to conclusions, you can appreciate the spaciousness of saying, "I don't know," with confidence. It opens up conversations rather than shutting them down. It invites others to share their perspectives rather than defending against yours. It creates room for discovery and surprise rather than forcing everything into predetermined categories. Not knowing also applies to understanding yourself. When someone asks what you want to do with your retirement, or how you're handling a difficult situation, or what you think about a complex issue, you can respond with honest uncertainty rather than manufactured confidence. "I'm still figuring that out" becomes a perfectly adequate and often more interesting answer than any definitive statement. This comfort with uncertainty extends to accepting that you're still changing, still learning, still becoming who you're meant to be. The pressure to have a fixed identity, a consistent personality, a clear life philosophy can be exhausting. When you stop rushing towards some final, perfected version of yourself, you can enjoy the ongoing process of discovery and growth. The wisdom of not knowing teaches us to hold our beliefs lightly. Views that seemed absolutely true 5 years ago might feel incomplete or even wrong now. Rather than being embarrassed by this evolution, you can appreciate it as evidence of an open and growing mind. You can have strong convictions while remaining curious about different perspectives. In relationships, not knowing creates space for other people to surprise you. Instead of thinking you understand your partner completely after years together, you can remain curious about who they're becoming. Instead of assuming you know how your children will turn out or what they need from you, you can stay open to learning about them as they grow and change. Not knowing also applies to the big questions that humans have been pondering for millennia. What happens after death? What's the meaning of suffering? How should we live a good life? These questions don't require your personal solution to be valuable. Sometimes the most profound wisdom lies in living fully within the mystery, rather than trying to solve it. The peace that comes with not knowing isn't resignation or intellectual laziness. It's an active engagement with complexity, a willingness to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously, a trust that life will reveal what you need to know when you need to know it. It's the difference between demanding answers and remaining available for understanding. Chapter 9. The Unexpected Gifts. When you finally stop rushing through life, you begin to notice gifts that were always being offered, but that you were moving too quickly to receive. These aren't the obvious gifts, the birthday presents and holiday bonuses and planned celebrations. These are the subtle offerings that life extends to us daily, waiting patiently for us to slow down enough to notice and accept them. The gift of witnessing. When you're not hurrying past the people in your life, you start to see them more clearly. You notice the way your friend's eyes light up when she talks about her grandchildren, the quiet strength your neighbor shows in caring for his elderly mother, the creative spark in your colleague that her job doesn't really allow her to express. This witnessing is a gift both to you and to them to you, because it enriches your understanding of human complexity, to them because being truly seen is one of our deepest needs. The gift of small beauties, a spider's web jeweled with morning dew, the way shadows move across your wall as the sun travels across the sky, the particular green of new leaves in spring, different from the deep green of summer or the transparent green of autumn. These moments of beauty don't announce themselves or demand your attention, they simply exist, available to anyone moving slowly enough to receive them. The gift of your body's wisdom. When you're not constantly overriding your physical needs in service of your schedule, you begin to notice what your body has been trying to tell you all along. The way certain foods make you feel energetic, while others leave you sluggish. The times of day when your mind is sharpest and when it needs rest. The activities that restore you versus those that drain you, even when they seem similar on the surface. The gift of intuition. In the space between urgent decisions, you can sense what feels right in your body, what aligns with your deeper values, what calls to something authentic in you. This isn't mystical or supernatural, it's simply having enough stillness to hear the quiet voice of your own wisdom beneath the louder voices of should and must and everyone else's expectations. The gift of serendipity. When you're not locked into tight schedules and predetermined outcomes, you're available for the unexpected encounters and opportunities that often turn out to be exactly what you needed. The conversation with a stranger in line at the coffee shop that gives you a new perspective on an old problem. The book that falls off the shelf just when you need its particular wisdom. The delayed flight that leads to meeting someone who becomes important in your life. The gift of gratitude. Not gratitude as a practice you have to remember to do, but gratitude that arises naturally when you're present enough to notice what you actually have. The friend who listens without judgment. The fact that your body carries you through each day. The roof that keeps you dry. The bed that welcomes you each night. The simple miracle that you're alive and aware in this moment. The gift of perspective. When you're not caught up in the urgency of immediate concerns, you can see your current challenges in the context of your whole life story. The difficulty that feels overwhelming right now has its place in a larger narrative of growth and resilience. The loss that seems unbearable is also part of a story that includes love and connection and meaning. The gift of presence with your own life. Instead of living primarily in your head, planning and worrying and analyzing, you can drop into the direct experience of being alive right now. The air moving in and out of your lungs, the sounds around you, the sensation of your feet on the ground, the fact that you exist and are aware and can choose how to respond to this moment. These gifts accumulate over time, creating a richness that can't be purchased or achieved through effort. They're available to anyone willing to slow down enough to receive them, gifts that transform ordinary life into something precious and meaningful. Chapter 10. The long view. When there's no rush, you naturally begin to see your life from a longer perspective, not just the urgent concerns of this week or this month, but the larger arc of your existence, the patterns that emerge over years and decades, the deeper currents that carry you through all the surface changes and challenges. The long view allows you to see that many of the things you worried about intensely in the past resolved themselves or turned out to be far less significant than they seemed at the time. The job rejection that felt devastating led to better opportunities. The relationship that ended painfully made space for healthier love. The health scare that terrified you motivated changes that improved your overall well-being. This isn't about becoming complacent or dismissing current concerns as unimportant. It's about holding them in the context of your resilience, your capacity for growth, your ability to adapt and learn and find meaning even in difficult circumstances. The long view reminds you that you've survived 100% of your worst days so far, and that knowledge becomes a source of quiet confidence rather than anxious urgency. From the long view, you can see how experiences that seemed random or meaningless at the time actually contributed to who you've become. The skills you developed in jobs you didn't love prepare you for work that matters more. The patience you learned caring for difficult people serves you well in all your relationships. The strength you built getting through hard times becomes available to help others facing similar challenges. The long view also reveals the circular nature of life's seasons. Just as winter always gives way to spring in nature, the difficult periods in your life have consistently given way to renewal and growth. This doesn't mean you stop taking current problems seriously, but you hold them with the wisdom of knowing that this too shall pass, both the difficulties and the joys. You begin to understand that life's most important developments often happen slowly, invisibly, in ways that can't be forced or rushed. The maturation of your character, the deepening of your relationships, the clarification of your values, these happen through accumulated experiences over time, not through dramatic moments of sudden transformation. The long view helps you make better decisions in the present because you can consider their implications over years rather than just months. The career move that looks attractive for its immediate benefits might not align with your long-term values. The friendship that requires a lot of energy right now might develop into something precious and sustaining over time. From this perspective, you can see that some of your most important life work has been internal and largely invisible to others. Learning to be kinder to yourself, developing the capacity to love without clinging, becoming more comfortable with uncertainty, growing into your authentic self rather than the person you thought you should be. The long view also brings a different quality of urgency. Not the frantic urgency of daily pressures, but the gentle urgency of recognizing that time is precious and finite. This awareness motivates you to spend your energy on what truly matters, rather than on what merely seems urgent. It encourages you to say, "I love you," more often, to forgive more quickly, to appreciate what you have while you have it. You realize that the legacy you leave won't primarily be your achievements or accumulations, but the love you gave, the kindness you showed, the way you made others feel seen and valued, the example you set of how to live with grace and authenticity. This understanding shifts your priorities naturally. Without effort or self-sacrifice, you want to spend your days in ways that contribute to this deeper legacy. The long view ultimately brings peace with the temporary nature of everything, including your own life. Rather than making existence feel meaningless, this acceptance makes each moment more precious, each relationship more valuable, each opportunity for love and growth more worthy of your full attention. Conclusion: the gentle revolution. As we reach the end of our exploration together, I want to return to where we began, with the recognition that learning to live without rush isn't about slowing down because you're tired or giving up because life has worn you out. It's about discovering a different way of being human, one that honors the natural rhythms of growth and rest, connection and solitude, knowing and not knowing. This gentle revolution doesn't require dramatic changes or life upheavals. It begins with small shifts in awareness, pausing before you speak in anger, taking 3 deep breaths instead of immediately checking your phone, choosing to really listen when someone is talking to you, instead of planning what you'll say next. It grows through moments of choosing presence over productivity, depth over speed, quality over quantity. It develops as you learn to trust that life has its own intelligence, its own timing, its own way of unfolding that doesn't require your constant management and control. The wisdom that emerges when there's no rush is available to anyone at any age, in any circumstances. You don't have to wait for retirement or recovery from illness or some perfect future moment when all your responsibilities have been cleared away. You can begin right now, in whatever situation you find yourself, by simply slowing down enough to notice what's actually happening in your life, rather than always thinking about what should happen next. The beautiful truth is that when you stop rushing towards some imagined better future, you often discover that your present life is already quite rich and meaningful. Not perfect, not without challenges or sorrows, but sufficient in ways you couldn't see when you were moving too fast to appreciate them. This doesn't mean settling for less than you deserve or giving up on dreams and aspirations. It means pursuing what matters to you from a place of wholeness rather than desperation, from love rather than fear, from trust in life's abundance rather than anxiety about scarcity. The insights we've explored together, the art of being present, the wisdom of patience, the grace of simplicity, the beauty of deep conversations, the rhythm of rest, the skill of letting go, the richness of ordinary days, the peace of not knowing, the gifts that appear when we slow down, and the perspective that comes from taking the long view. These aren't abstract concepts to think about. They're lived experiences available to you every day. When you wake up tomorrow morning, you have a choice. You can immediately begin the familiar rush toward productivity and achievement and getting through the day, or you can take a moment to simply arrive in your own life. To notice the quality of light coming through your windows, to feel gratitude for another day of existence, to set an intention to move through the hours ahead with presence and kindness. That choice is available to you again and again throughout each day. In the grocery store line, instead of feeling frustrated by the wait, you can observe the people around you with curiosity and compassion. During a difficult conversation, instead of rushing to defend your position, you can listen more deeply to understand what the other person is really trying to communicate. When facing a decision, instead of immediately choosing the most efficient option, you can pause to consider what choice would align with your deeper values. The gentle revolution spreads not through preaching or convincing others to change, but through modeling a different way of being. When people encounter someone who is truly present, who listens without agenda, who moves through life with grace rather than urgency, it reminds them that this way of living is possible for them too. Your willingness to slow down gives others permission to slow down. Your comfort with uncertainty helps others relax their need to have all the answers. Your acceptance of ordinary days as sufficient and meaningful challenges the cultural myth that life must be constantly extraordinary to be worthwhile. As you continue on your journey, remember that this isn't about achieving some state of perfect presence or perpetual calm. There will still be times when urgency is appropriate, when you need to move quickly, when the demands of life require efficiency and focus. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference between true urgency and manufactured rush, between responding to life's actual requirements and getting caught up in the anxiety of endless becoming. The goal isn't to eliminate all stress or challenge from your life, but to meet whatever arises from a place of centeredness rather than reactivity. To respond to difficulties with wisdom rather than panic. To embrace joys with full presence rather than already thinking about when they'll end. In those moments when you find yourself slipping back into old patterns of rush and worry, and you will, because you're human, you can simply notice what's happening with kindness rather than judgment, and gently return to the pace of presence. This returning itself becomes a practice, a way of being gentle with yourself as you learn to be gentle with life. The wisdom of living without rush is ultimately about remembering what it means to be fully human. Not the rushed, anxious, always becoming version of humanity that our culture often promotes, but the deeper humanity that includes stillness and depth, connection and solitude, acceptance and growth, love and loss, all held within the spaciousness of a heart that has learned to trust life's timing. As you close this book and return to your daily life, take with you the invitation to experiment with unhurried living, not as another item on your self-improvement list, but as a gentle gift you can offer yourself and everyone whose life touches yours. The gift of your full presence, your patient attention, your willingness to receive whatever life wants to teach you when you're moving slowly enough to learn. The revolution is gentle because it doesn't require you to fight against anything or force yourself to be different. It simply asks you to remember who you are beneath all the doing and achieving and rushing toward tomorrow. It invites you to come home to the quiet wisdom that has been waiting patiently inside you all along, ready to guide you toward a life of depth and meaning and peace. This is your life, right now, in all its imperfect beauty. This moment, with whatever it contains, is your point of access to everything that matters. You don't have to rush toward it because you're already here. You don't have to earn it because it's already yours. You only have to slow down enough to receive it, to let it fill you, to let it teach you what it means to be alive and aware and grateful in this one precious existence you've been given. The wisdom is here, in the pause between one breath and the next, in the space between what was and what will be, in the eternal now that contains all possibilities. When there's no rush, everything you need is already present, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to come home to the profound sufficiency of this moment, this life, this one beautiful chance to be human. Take a deep breath. Let yourself arrive. The journey begins now.